Age doesn't matter, love has no limits. I have been involved in politics for over 30 years. My story begins during the elections. There were many meetings going on, so my phone was always on, just in case. One night, early 2011, at 4:20 am I received a message. It was a beautiful poem of love. I was wondering who in the world would send me this. It had to be a practical joke. I called and texted the number in the morning but received no response. I was really curious by this time and also annoyed, so I tried again only to be met with silence one more time. I sent a message saying, "You have the courage to send a message. Don't you have the courage to pick up? And it is not appropriate to wake a lady up like this at this ungodly hour." Silence again. That night at 3:20 am I received another poem of love. It was an interesting coincidence as I had had a very emotional day during the day and had even shed some tears. The poem I received was about wasting my precious tears. Gosh, it must be a stalker. I wrote back once again saying, "Who is this?" This time he responded, "Are you very curious?" I said, "Yes," but received nothing again. I called and again got silence. The next night at 2:20 am, I received yet another poem about love. I was starting to get annoyed now. I messaged saying I was going to lodge an official complaint. Either pick up the phone or stop sending me messages. Finally, a response. It read, "We are sorry, those messages were sent in error. We just noticed. We would like to apologize." And I said, "Okay, I accept your apology," and closed this chapter in my head. I did note, though, that he had said we. However, I got more messages the next day. The sender now wanted to speak to me. I turned him down. I was snuggled on my couch that evening minding my own business when he texted again asking to speak. I figured I should get to the bottom of this and see if this is a practical joke for once and for all, so I accepted. The phone rang immediately. I picked up with every single intention to give him a piece of my mind. A voice said, "Hi, this is Irae." All my intentions went out the window at that precise second. His voice took me to another world. It was the most beautiful tone of voice ever, so smooth and masculine. It engulfed and hypnotized me. He explained the situation. One of his best friends had broken up with his girlfriend. She had been refusing to take his calls or respond to his messages, so they were trying to get through to her using a number she didn't know. Somehow they had punched the number incorrectly and the messages had landed up with me. They were working the night shift in a factory, thus the odd hours. He used to check his phone and just tell his buddy, "Yep, your girl called back." And this is why he never actually picked up when I called him. The conversation flowed. He explained that he was actually the son of a farmer and was working in a factory as had he wanted a change. He lived in Balıkesir. I said I was in a coastal town close to Istanbul. He immediately asked, "Sile?" I again thought he was playing with me when he said he knew about Sile, which is where I really do live. He had actually done his military service in Sile and was familiar with the place. Coincidence? He explained that he was definitely not playing around. He said he noticed from the way I talked that I was a respectable lady who was on the mature side. I asked him how old he was. He said 28. I told him I had a son his age. He said that it was no problem and that he just enjoyed talking to me and he wanted to just talk, share his joys and sorrows over the phone with me, and that he would very much appreciate it if I was kind enough to listen. The conversation continued with him sharing more about himself. At the end he asked if he could call me again. I told him if these were the types of conversations to be shared that he was welcome to call. I said if you have any other intentions or are just trying to have a laugh at my expense, then let us say goodbye here and not speak again. He promised he only wanted to call when he needed advice or just wanted to talk. He asked me how old I was. I said 55. I told him I lived with my son. This was actually a lie, but I didn't know if this man could be trusted and I didn't want him to know I lived alone. We said goodbye and hung up. A few minutes later he called again. He had a question. He wanted to know why I never mentioned a husband and why I was living with my son. I told him I had lost my husband 4 years ago. He said, "I just didn't want your husband to be getting the wrong idea if he was around. That's why I asked. Can I call you again?" I said, "No problem, son." He said, "Please don't call me son." See, that was my approach to him then. The messages and phone calls began. I would wake up to a good morning message and then he would call me quite a few times during the day. We started to open up more and more to each other. I told him about my children, my past, my late husband. He told me about the relationships he had had. We were getting closer and closer. We had crossed paths during our most troubled times. We shared our troubles. We slowly got deeper and deeper into each other's souls. A few months passed like this. One day I got a message. He said, I want to tell you something, but I don't want you to get emotional or upset about it. Since we had started talking, we had had some very emotional moments and had shared tears during some very private discussions. I asked him why he wanted to share things with me that would make me cry. He said, I just want to tell you something and want to hear your voice, and when you respond, I want you to do it verbally, no texting. I thought, well, I guess this is it. He will say that was nice. We had a good run, but let's end this here. See, I had slowly started to get these feelings for him. We had described ourselves to each other but didn't really know what we actually looked like. He is not a big fan of Facebook and neither am I, so we hadn't connected there yet. We had old-fashioned phones, so there was no photo exchange there either. We only had our verbal descriptions and our imaginations to go by. But the feelings were there. So I went and closed the door for some privacy and had called me. I said, so say what you have to say. Let's see if I cry or scream or something. He said, Esma, I am in love with you. Enter shocked silence. Are you there? Yes. He said, why are you silent? I said, Ray, what do you love about me? You don't know if I am bald or blind or crippled. You don't know me. He said, I don't know. I love the way you talk. I love the way you laugh. I love the way you cry. I love the way you think. I love your voice. These are the things I love. I accept everything and love everything about you. I was stunned and delighted and terrified all at once. I said, I am overweight, and he said, I don't care. I am overweight too. It was funny. We discussed it further, being very frank about our expectations. He said he wanted to see me. I didn't know how he would react if he saw me. I was not courageous enough for that, and I told him so. I asked him for some more time. Meanwhile, I confided in a good friend of mine. She naturally had concerns. You're much older. He is much younger. He might think you're wealthy. He might be a swindler. He might be a gigolo. I was also worried about a few of those too, but then again, this guy had never seen me. He knew nothing about me. Meanwhile, I was dieting like crazy. I must have lost 10 kilos. Every week I told him to come by. Every week I changed my mind. I knew I really had to make a decision. I had to explore it and see what happened. We had been on the phone 4.5 months, but I had no idea how much longer this would suffice. Something had to happen. I had to move forward. I told him to come and see me that Monday. I said we could have a quick dinner, decide on our next steps, and then he could leave. We were so excited. I got to the bus station without getting lost, as if by divine guidance. The crowd got off the bus, and although I was quite a distance away, I saw one of the passengers standing with his back towards me, and I just knew that it was him. I called his mobile phone. He said he was worried that I had taken one look, turned around and run the other way. I said I had no such intention. I approached him. We were finally face to face. He said, you are exactly as I imagined. I said, you too, but I was thinking maybe you would have the traditional Turkish look with the mustache and the belly. We laughed. He was actually quite handsome, fit and modern looking. I was so excited that I got lost driving to the restaurant. We finally were there and settled in for dinner. He was very caring right from the start. He isn't much of a drinker and was also telling me I shouldn't drink as I was driving. Apparently, every time I had told him to come, he had bought me a rose. And every time I canceled, he had kept it for me. He gave all of them to me during dinner. It was very touching. The gypsy kid selling flowers came over with lots of innuendo about how nice we looked together. So many cultures are accepting of a younger woman with an elder man, but they are never as accepting with the roles reversed. I felt the need to tell the gypsy boy that Aray was my son. Aray went bright red and shot me a look he wasn't happy. Not to be repeated. Suddenly, I got very warm indeed and felt a wave of panic taking over. I kept thinking, what am I doing here? I grabbed my bag with one hand and had my phone in the other. I had a mad instinct that was telling me to run. Just get out. There I was, hand on my bag, trying to plot my exit, wondering how I would run away through the only way out, which was right in his line of vision, or if I would pretend to go to the ladies' room and sneak out somehow. When he saw my phone in my hand, he said, we can take photos if you want. If he didn't like me, if he was going to disappear after this dinner here, he wouldn't be asking for photos. See, it doesn't matter how confident you are, how at peace you are with yourself. When there is such a considerable age gap, worrying thoughts enter your mind uninvited and unwelcome. He had sensed this. He grabbed my hand and said, please sit down, my dear. If you need the ladies' room, I will walk you there. Strix, I managed to come up with a lame, oh, I was just going to put my phone in my bag. He accepted that, and I took a breath and calmed down. We had a nice dinner, and it was time for him to leave. As I was dropping him off, he moved forward to kiss me goodbye, and I am not sure where he was aiming at, but I pulled back. He grabbed me and his kiss landed on my forehead. Phew. He said he would be back in 2 days and he would stay. I said okay. I had no idea if he would follow through. The messages and phone calls continued the moment we parted. He wanted to make sure I got home safe. We couldn't stop texting and talking. My kids were staying with me for a day as they had renovation going on in their apartment and they noticed. I had to pretend the messages were for meetings. I was just over the moon. I had to tell him to stop calling me my love as it was such a cliche. So he started calling me my sultan, and I told him to just stop calling me anything at all as it would make me cry and I didn't want my kids to see. 2 days flew by as if in a dream, and next thing I know he was on his way. He politely asked where he would be staying, and I told him he would be my guest. I trusted him enough for that. I said my son was away for 10 days. I still wasn't comfortable enough telling him that I lived alone. I picked him up. We spent most of the evening on my terrace talking. He loved my home. I must admit I am very good around the house and I keep it in tip-top condition. I had set up my room for him and told him it was because the bed there was bigger. The only reason I wanted to take the guest room for myself was because the door actually had a key. We wished each other good night and went to our rooms. I was in my nightie and also put on my bathrobe with the belt knotted tightly shut. A few minutes later I got a message from him saying he was next door if I missed him. I said I realized he was next door and wished him good night. Boom. He respected my need for time and never tried a single thing that night. It was my call. We had a very enjoyable day the next day. I prepared a lovely breakfast, woke him up, then off we went exploring Ayasma, a very pretty coastal town close by. We got home later in the evening and slept in separate rooms again. We were like a married couple. Comfortable, talking, laughing, watching TV, playing cards. He didn't even once try to hold my hand, but I could feel his gaze burning through me. All I had to do was take a small step towards him. He sensed my hesitation and respected it. My friend owns a hotel in Agva, another pretty coastal town just a short drive away. She called insisting I come by for a few days. I asked Tire and he said he would love a getaway. We decided we would say he was my cousin and headed out the next day. I told my friend to book us 2 rooms. It was a great idea. All my friends were there and we were really enjoying ourselves. After dinner he walked me to my room. Always the gentleman, he took my keys and unlocked the door for me. I wished him good night and sent him off to his room. We had another lovely day the next day and more of my friends joined us. Great mix, we all got along wonderfully. My maximum limit of alcohol is 2 glasses of raka, which is exactly what I had that night. As usual, after dinner he walked me to my room, my keys in his hand. This time he gently pushed me into the room and asked me what was going on, what did I want. I told him he had said he wouldn't mind a getaway